The phrases only a weak mind can speak and why they reveal everything. They say you can hide your fears behind silence. You can hide your insecurities behind confidence. But your words betray you long before your actions do. A weak mind never collapses loudly. It collapses quietly, in the tiny phrases it repeats without realizing, in the sentences it whispers when it thinks no one is listening. And that's where this story begins, with a man who didn't know his own words were exposing him more than any enemy ever could. His name was Ethan. Calm eyes, controlled posture. To the world, he looked strong and the type of man who never breaks. But strength isn't what a man shows. Strength is what slips out when pressure rises, and weakness leaks out the same way. It started one late evening. Black clouds hung low, the room dim, the air heavy. He sat across from her, a woman who had studied human behavior long enough to know that people reveal the truth accidentally. Ethan didn't know he was being observed. He didn't know she listened to how he spoke more than what he said. And she noticed the first crack when he whispered, "I don't care anymore. It doesn't matter." Weak men say that when something matters more than they can admit, when the world feels too heavy, and they pretend to be above the pain because facing it feels impossible. She stayed silent. Silence makes a weak mind shake. And it did. He shifted in his seat. His breathing changed. And then came the second phrase, the phrase no strong mind has ever used. "I already know how this will end." A sentence soaked in fear. Only people who've lost battles inside their head repeat it. It's the phrase of a man who predicts failure before trying. A man who calls fear experience to hide the truth. But she didn't interrupt. She let him speak. Because the more a weak mind talks, the more it reveals the enemy it's fighting inside. Minutes passed, his voice lowered, almost trembling, as if he didn't even hear what he was saying. The third phrase, the most dangerous one. It tells you everything about the abandonment he never healed from, about the wounds he pretends he doesn't carry, about the story he believes the world will repeat. To him, it was just a sentence. To her, it was a map of his deepest scars. His posture stiffened, his hands clenched slightly, as if he realized for a moment that he had exposed too much. But the weak mind always compensates with pride, so he straightened up and gave a cold, forced laugh. That's when he said the fourth phrase, "I'm fine, I don't need anyone." The lie every broken person repeats like a shield. She looked at him, not with judgment, but with the recognition of someone who has seen this pattern 100 times. A strong-looking man carrying a collapsing foundation. But Ethan didn't notice. He kept talking, and then the room shifted. A small sound outside. A knock, a thud, a faint movement. Something that shouldn't have been there. He froze, not because of the sound, but because fear makes the weak mind expose itself instantly. His eyes widened, his breath hitched, and without thinking, he whispered the phrase that revealed everything. "Please don't leave me alone." He didn't mean to say it. It slipped out like a childhood memory, raw, unfiltered, and full of the truth he spent years bearing. Silence filled the room. She saw it, the crack, the vulnerability, the truth behind every strong mask he had ever worn. Because that's the real secret. A weak mind doesn't reveal itself in arguments, or in anger, or in loud emotions. It reveals itself in the softest sentence, the one that slips out when fear pushes past pride. And in that moment, before he could take the words back, before he could rebuild the mask he dropped, she leaned forward and quietly asked, "Who taught you to fear being alone?" His pupils tightened, his jaw clenched, and for the first time, he didn't have a phrase ready to hide behind. The truth was rising, the memories he ran from were waking up. And the mind he thought was strong was beginning to unravel, phrase by phrase, fear by fear, moment by moment. But this was only the beginning, because the next phrase he speaks, the one he hasn't said yet, will expose a truth far darker than weakness, a truth he isn't prepared to face. Ethan didn't answer her question. Not at first. Weak minds don't respond immediately. They retreat, they stall, they look for an escape route inside their own head. His eyes flicked toward the window, toward the door, toward anywhere but her. But the room was too quiet, too still, and silence forces truth out of people who've spent their whole life running from it. Finally, he exhaled, slow, sharp, like someone releasing a memory they didn't want to touch. I learned it a long time ago, he whispered, before I even understood what fear was. She didn't interrupt. She knew the patterns. A weak mind doesn't break suddenly. It cracks in layers. Ethan swallowed hard. When people leave you early, you grow up assuming everyone will. There it was, the core wound, the scar that shaped every phrase he used to hide his weakness. She leaned back, watching him with the calm of someone who studies human behavior like a surgeon studies anatomy. So, all those phrases you repeat, she said softly, they're not accidents. They're survival mechanisms. He shook his head sharply. No, they're truths. Are they? He froze. His mind didn't have a defense prepared for a question that simple. She continued, her voice steady, the kind of tone that disarms the ego and slices straight into the subconscious. When you say, I don't care, you actually care too much. When you say, I know how this will end, you're afraid of a past repeating itself. When you say, everyone leaves, you're still talking to the ghosts of your childhood. His jaw clenched, his breathing tightened. The truth was hitting him faster than he could rebuild his walls. Then she leaned in, her words quiet but sharp enough to cut through every layer he hid behind. And when you said, please don't leave me alone, that wasn't you speaking. That was the little boy inside you who never got to feel safe. He shut his eyes. For a moment, it looked like he might break. Not loudly, not dramatically, but in the way men break when they finally see the truth that they've been avoiding for years. Then she asked the one question he'd spent his entire life avoiding. What are you really afraid of, Ethan? His voice cracked. Just once, barely noticeable, but it was enough to reveal the truth his phrases had been hiding. I'm afraid, he whispered, that if someone truly sees me, they'll realize I'm not strong at all. Silence, but not the silence of fear this time, the silence of understanding. She nodded slowly. Then listen carefully, she said. Strength isn't pretending you're unbreakable. Strength is being seen and not running from it. He opened his eyes. For the first time, they didn't look defensive. They didn't look guarded. They looked real. She continued, weak minds hide behind phrases. Strong minds confront the truth behind them. Ethan stared at the floor for a long moment. And then, almost reluctantly, he asked, so what now? Her answer was simple, calm, final. Now you stop speaking like a weak man and start thinking like a man who survived. That was the turning point, the moment his old identity cracked and a new one began to form. Not instantly, not magically, but unmistakably. Because sometimes a single sentence, spoken at the right moment, is enough to pull a man out of the prison he built for himself. He stood up slowly, his posture different, not stronger, not yet, but no longer pretending. And as he walked toward the door, he didn't repeat any of the old phrases. Not, I don't care, not, it doesn't matter, not, everyone leaves. He simply said, I'm ready to stop running. And for the first time, his words didn't reveal weakness. They revealed change.